Well, hello and welcome to Phuket Insights. Today I'm joined by Austin Powers. Yes, indeed. We'll get into that later on. And we're going to talk about his life in Phuket, what he did before, and all his experiences since he's been here. Well, Austin, thank you very much for coming.
Nice. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So, can you just give me a short summary of who you are and what you do in Phuket?
Well, I'm Austin Powers.
Yeah.
I'm I'm the original one. I was born before the movie.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make me the only one, obviously. A name is a name.
Yeah.
And what am I doing here? It's a long story. I won't give the full story, but the condensed version is I'm from America, and for some reason, everyone is born, I believe, with something, right? Something that feels right for them, or that they're into, or that kind of just fits. Maybe they're drawn to it. Maybe maybe it comes naturally. But for me, it wasn't really. I wasn't finding it in America, and Asia always was pulling me towards it. From the time I was about 4 years old, I was fascinated with China originally. I started learning Chinese when I was in high school. High school originally. I started studying. I studied Chinese for over 17 years. I lived in China for a long time, and bringing me here was I was originally very interested in learning about sort of different world cultures, world religions, world food as well, because I love food. And we'll get to that in a moment. But I really love food, and I've been to almost every country in Asia now, living more than half of my life in Asia. So I've really I had been to Thailand probably 4 or 5 times. And at the point that I was ready in my career to say, you know what, I'm tired of working for other people, and I want to do something for myself. And that wasn't just about what do I want to do, but as a part of like, who do I want to be? It's also where do I want to be? And I thought about all of the places in the world that I've been, and where did I feel the most at home? And this really stood out.
Well, Phuket.
Thailand
Thailand.
specifically. And Phuket, because I have a daughter and a few other reasons. We have quite a few friends and a good network here. Phuket made sense for that because of the good network, etc.
Okay. And
But
what do you do here for a living?
well, so I mentioned food, right? And originally, what I was so this is another slightly more complicated story than I wish it was. So I've been cooking for a long time. I've been cooking since I started cooking when I was about 12. And I've been a professional chef in a few different countries. I was a professional chef in the US for a while. I was a head chef of three different restaurants in Beijing, one in Shanghai. I catered to four different embassies in Beijing,
Wow.
and I did some work at other in other ways as a chef in other places. Excuse me, but I'm also an underwater photographer and a dive instructor, and you can actually see my underwater photography if you want on Instagram at
Yeah.
Scuba Powers.
Well, I'll put a link on
Thank
later
you.
on.
Um, and but now there was an incident. I was preparing to open a studio to teach underwater photography here. And about 2 weeks before it was going to open, we were going to open it, I had an accident, and it was a low blood sugar incident, and um, I stood up and I passed out and I fell down and my head hit the concrete
Oh dear.
so hard that it sounded like a gunshot. Apparently, I don't know. I don't have any recollection of this. My partner told me all of this. I don't actually remember the 2 months surrounding this accident. It's all been wiped from my memory. And and yeah, I was taken to the hospital. I almost died because late at night, like 4 in the morning, my brain started choking on its own blood. There was internal bleeding. So then at night they had to like do an emergency surgery to cut out part of my skull, and then there's a lot of complications. There was also as part of that I got a staph infection in my brain, right?
Yeah.
Just to add cherry on top of the frosting, and so I was in the hospital for quite some time, and it's mostly better now physically, but I do have epilepsy now because of it,
Oh dear.
and all of that's, as you can imagine, changed my relationship with diving a bit. If you have a seizure when you're 20 meters under the water,
That's not good.
it's a little bit different than having one right here.
So you've obviously put the dive school on hold, or what did you do with the business?
It's we have plans for it, but it's not. I can't go down and teach people underwater photography right now. So this is something that I was sitting there, spending time, sitting there, recovering physically, and I was like, what am I going to do? I've got to do something. And people started asking me, they said, hey, are you going to, because I've always had a habit of living in Asia for so long. If I'm not fully satisfied with something I can buy to eat, I just make it myself. That's either cost or quality. It doesn't mean it's not out there. It just means I don't wanna pay X amount for a pizza that I think actually tastes good, or bacon or whatever it is. Sometimes quality comes with a cost when you're not in the same country. And the same goes the other way around to like Asian food in the West. You want good Japanese food when you're in London, it comes with a cost. I guess. I haven't been to London.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm going to assume. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just, so I'll just make it. That's why I do pizza. I mean, I don't I don't sell it, but I make pizza. I do wood fired.
All right. So just to summarize, right, when I asked what you do in Phuket, you had set up a dive school, underwater photography
Yeah.
school, and due to an unfortunate event, you've had to put that on hold, and you're looking at ways to maybe take it forward. But you mentioned food.
Oh.
Your food interest is purely domestic, or do you actually work as a chef still?
Oh, so I don't work as a chef. What I do is I develop the recipes, but I have a smokehouse.
Excellent.
Yeah. It's actually,
Oh, there we go.
yeah. It's called
Excellent.
Blenny's Smokehouse.
So that's what you do. Excellent.
And it's still connected to the ocean. See, a blenny
Mm-hmm.
is one of my favorite fish to photograph. Yeah.
Excellent.
Um,
So how long have you been in Phuket?
I've been in Phuket for about 4 years now.
4 years, okay. And when you got here, what were your first impressions, and what happened, with regards to, say, expectations versus reality?
Expectations versus reality. Well, I'd spent some time here, so I had some ideas of what to expect. I had been living in China before. I had been living in Beijing,
Yeah.
Shanghai, Hong Kong, Taiwan,
Yeah.
and Singapore.
Yeah, you have a big advantage over many, which is your experience of Asia is obviously extensive. For
Yeah.
most people that come to Asia, or say somewhere like Phuket, and they haven't really been in Asia before, there's always a bit of a
Some
culture
shock.
shock,
Yeah.
which is the underlying purpose of this question. But in your case, I
was a
think
bit
you're
different.
already being immunized. But no, that's all right. So to keep it in context, let's
But-
wind it back.
Yeah.
Maybe it's maybe going back 10 years or even more. When you first came to this part of the world, what were your first impressions compared to what you grew up with, perhaps?
Um, well, so for me, when I first went, I would say there were three interesting moments that I can think of is when I first went to Beijing, and then when I went back from studying is the reverse culture shock I had. And then actually when I went to Phuket, when I first came to Phuket, there's one I can think of. So when I first went to Beijing, was the first time I really finally, I'd been feeling like my whole life, like I was uncomfortable in the US. Not like uncomfortable, not like
Yeah, I know what
someone
you
was
mean.
chasing me or something, but like I just didn't really feel like I belonged there for a bunch of different reasons. It would take me an hour to get into it, but like I'm happy to, but maybe now is not the time. And so I was always a bit uncomfortable in the US, and I was always wanting to get out and go be somewhere. And not just visit, but really be somewhere. And this was the first time I had a chance to do that. And it was not only somewhere, but it was a place that mattered to me. It was a place that I was connected to, that I'd studied the language for many years, that I had special feelings for. And I I finally got there, and I didn't need anyone's help anymore all of a sudden. Because in the US, I wasn't driving still. Like, I wasn't like other Americans. Like, I didn't get a driver's license when I was young, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I was a bit different. um, so like I could go around, do whatever I wanted. I could use my Chinese. I was living in the city. Like I I felt more freedom going to live in China as an American than I ever did living in America. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. And I mean, it's a feeling. It's just a feeling, but that's how I felt.
And when you got to Phuket?
Well, first, for the line of logic, when I went back to the U.S., because otherwise,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, when I went back to the U.S., I felt like terrified because I felt like all of that freedom was stripped away, and it felt horrible. Like I felt like I couldn't go anywhere. I felt like I couldn't do anything. I felt like I didn't know anyone anymore. And I felt like I'd gone from this giant place where I could meet anyone and go out and like anything was possible to my college was this tiny 650 students on a hill, which is beautiful in its own way. I mean, I loved that college actually. But at that time, it was not what I needed to help with that process. Anyway, so for Phuket, what was interesting to me was Phuket was my first time um, being like out after school, living outside of a city. And I mean, I never had a driver's license until I got to Phuket. I got my first driving license here in Phuket
That's
in my
amazing.
late 30s.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So it's actually a big. I mean, that was a big deal for me, and that's pretty special to hear. There's a lot that I learned in Phuket, and I've learned a lot about local sort of local ethnic groups in Thailand and around here, and Myanmar and Laos as well, which is really nice. And I think this is something that I hope more people can learn about
Yeah.
because this is beautiful.
So what's your day-to-day like? What's it? Tell me about your day, a normal day for you. What do you do?
Oh, on a cook day or a not cook day?
Well, bit of both.
Well, on a cook days are fun. Cook day, excuse me. Cook days, oh geez, depends on what we're cooking. We've got a big menu, and I'm happy to say that despite what's on our menu, we will smoke anything as long as it's legal and as long as we can actually get the meat here, or the vegetable or whatever it is. You know, it's not. We do smoke vegetables too, and fruits even. Not all fruits are good smoked. Mangoes, have not had much luck with that, but some fruits are good. But a typical day is we'll wake up decently early and get the smoker started. And usually things go on and off as the smoker started. Most everything is prepped before, long before, because things to go on the smoker tend to be marinated for significant amounts of time, or a lot of what I do is cured. So things like bacon are cured for a week. We do equilibrium curing for our bacon, so that's cured for about a week. Unlike what you typically get for store-bought, which is just 1 or 2 days. Then we have other things like pastrami or things like that, which are cured for much longer. So it really depends on sort of what it is, but a typical day involves, I would say, about 1/5 of figuring out, okay, what the fuck do I have to do? And then 4/5 of, okay, now let's go do it.
All right. So since you've been in Phuket, can you tell me something that's really worked well for you? And then afterwards, I'm going to ask you what has not worked out so well. So what's worked for you here?
Something that has worked well for me in Phuket. Not overthinking things. As soon as I stopped overthinking things and letting my head getting in the way, things started getting easier.
Yeah. And would you put that down to the environment and lifestyle then?
What do you mean?
Well, Phuket in general and the way of life here, that's conducive to that not overthinking. Is it, in other words, when you say what's worked for you is not overthinking, is that a mindset that you would have reached anywhere, or has being here and your lifestyle helped with it?
Um, I think it's forced it. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so that's worked for you. What hasn't worked? Anything being difficult or frustrating?
Rain. No, I'm just kidding. I think difficult or frustrating for Phuket specifically, or Thailand?
Well, we're talking about Phuket,
Phuket.
but obviously Thailand is just
Phuket. It's the same?
more or less.
More or less? Okay.
I mean, I know Phuket's a bit of a bubble, and they, you know, and the ratio of expats and locals is not the same as if you go over the bridge, but in general, issues you have in Phuket, in my opinion, are normally to do with Thai culture or Thai ways of doing things. And therefore, whether it's Phuket or Thailand in general is not really the point. But if it's something specific to Phuket, for me, I might say the traffic. Which is, if you go across to Phang Nga, traffic is not an issue.
Yeah.
Traffic is definitely a Phuket issue. So I can ask you again. So what hasn't worked, and what do you, or have you found frustrating or difficult?
Well, the traffic's not bad, but it doesn't really bother me that much. I'm new to driving, and since I have epilepsy now, I'm not allowed to drive until I don't have a seizure for a year. Which I'm now at half a year.
Excellent.
No seizure.
That's
Thank you.
good.
I think one thing that's bothering me a lot, though, is the foreigners here and how I see them interacting with locals in a few different contexts. So one example of that is gentrification, which you see happening, like in Phuket. You can see local Phuketians and Phuket culture getting pushed to the sidelines, away from the where they used to live, to the sidelines of the island, and I hope not off the island, but probably some. And I think that's a real shame.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And
Places like Manique and places where there's massive developments going on.
yeah,
Some of it is out in the greenery area, and so all that's been lost is the trees and the green, which is bad enough. But in other areas, you can see that it's changing the infrastructure of the villages, which is a bit upsetting. I don't know how far it's going to go, but I hear you on that one. So the next one is basically, what's the real upsides of living in Phuket?
Phuket is at an interesting transition point. And that means that, like, right now, this is why a lot of people are being negative about it, is that a lot of people are unhappy about saying, oh, it's not the Phuket that I knew before. It's not the Phuket that I knew before. And people are always like that with any place that they see changing a lot. People say that about New York. People say this about Beijing. People say this about anywhere that they see changing a lot. So you can't take someone else's negative and just input that on your brain. What you have to do is look at the fact that it's changing and look at the rapid change as the possibility for something interesting. And there is a huge interesting possibility in some of the changes that are coming up if you look at some of the plans that are in the future, especially for the area of Phang Nga right north of Phuket, and the kind of industry and activity that could bring down to Phuket in this area.
What are the frustrations that people don't talk about?
People don't talk about, like, rainy season, to be honest, is actually a better time of year to come. Like, the shoulder months are the perfect time to come. Sure, you might get a couple rainy days, but, like, you're gonna have 90% less mosquitoes. You're gonna have 5 to 10% cooler weather. Yeah, if you're lucky.
But I get you. The so-called low season, in my opinion, is the best time of year for many things. Not so much for swimming on the west coast. If the seas get dangerous in the low season, you can't swim. But people do surf, but it's not safe for, like, tourists to swim. So the high season is much better for you if you're interested in the beaches and swimming. What's next? What do you see? Where do you see yourself in a year's time or 5 years' time? You're going to be here?
Oh, I'll be here. This is home now. This is I've spent the last since when I moved to China, I spent first 8.5 years in Beijing, and then I moved around like every 2 to 3 years, from Beijing to Hong Kong to Shanghai to Taiwan to a lot of moving, and I'm getting old. I'm tired. I had a near-death experience. I'm ready to just chill.
But it's interesting, out of all those places, Phuket is where you've chosen to put your roots down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like Phuket.
Yeah.
It's nice. If it's outside of Phuket, it would still be in Thailand and close to here.
Yeah.
you know, and even if it's outside of Phuket, Phuket is never like gone from my vision. Like Blenny's, for example, is not a restaurant. We do delivery. So it's like we do all of Thailand. We're just based here for now. So it's like even if we leave Phuket, we'll be doing like events and things here. You know,
Okay.
we'll always care about Phuket.
Excellent. So, what haven't I asked you? What have I missed? Is there one thing that you would tell anybody who's thinking about, say, relocating to Phuket, a piece of information or a bit of advice that you think that they should know?
Everyone who wants to move to another country should spend a little bit of time in that other country first, in the target destination. Go visit. If you don't have the money to go visit and move, wait, make the money, save it up, then go take the visit and then move. It's not worth it, because if you spend all of your money and then move and then find out you don't like it, you will really regret it.
Yeah, you burnt your bridges.
Yeah. Just it's worth spending that time.
Is there something that happened to you on the island that you learned a lesson that you would share with somebody else?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that have happened to me on this island. Oh, well, so like this fall didn't happen on this island, but everything leading up to it did. And that, I think, was a big lesson. You can see the
Yes, I can.
yeah. And the fall was actually here. This is where they cut to open out the and that was really crazy, by the way. Missing a piece of your skull for like almost a year is really weird. What happened was, as a underwater photographer, I was always mostly interested in macro, like really small stuff. Typically, the largest stuff I like to photograph is 1-2 centimeters.
Oh, so you're getting really close.
I'm getting really close to things that are like millimeters. Most divers aren't even seeing it. Most people don't even know it exists. And this is what I like to photograph. And so freediving had no real interest for me, because I'm often sitting there for 20, 30 minutes on a subject, very carefully positioning my camera, my lights, everything, because it's not easy when you're balancing yourself at depth with your buoyancy and everything, and you've got current. But I decided, I had a friend convince me, who turned out not to be a very good friend, but that's another part of the story. Convinced me that it was worth trying freediving. And I ended up deciding that I loved the ocean enough that it would be worth it. So I started learning with this guy. My friend is also a trainer, for an instructor for freediving, and it was going well, but it was going a little too well, and so I started working out harder, and then going really well, and then I went out for the open water classes, and in my first day of open water, I reached 25 meters depth
Free dive.
freediving on one breath of air, which is crazy. This is quite good. He told me that a lot of people study for months to get to that. And so I was like, okay, realistically, how good, like, what goal could I probably set for myself if I worked at it like this for a year or two? He was like, I don't know, maybe you could hit like 100 meters. I was like, all right, I want to hit 100 meters then. Let's go. And I started working like crazy. I lost 30 kilos in 2 months. It's too fast. It's way too fast. And combination of too strict of a diet and too intense of exercise. Like the morning that I had the low blood sugar episode, I had that episode around 2 in the afternoon. That morning I'd woken up like, I don't know, 5, 6 in the morning. I ran to the gym, like a kilometer and a half. Had no breakfast, and then, or maybe like a yogurt, and then did like 3 hours of high intensity interval training, and then had a smoothie, like a protein shake smoothie and a banana, and then ran back, and I was cooking lunch.
You were obviously well taken care of medically, so you were well insured, I take it then.
So here's what the real kicker. I found out the hard way that through this incident that my medical insurance was a scam. Very difficult. That would be, you know what? That would be a good thing for people coming to Thailand to know.
Health
Is
insurance.
like not only have insurance, but like really, really, really look at it into like what your insurance is, and like make sure you understand the insurance and that it's going to work for you here.
Can I ask, obviously you were rushed to hospital and there was emergency surgeries and all the rest of it, intensive care. What was the bill, roughly? I mean, I'm sure it's ongoing, but just to give me a rough idea what the cost that you had to find.
I don't remember exactly, but
No, it doesn't have to be exact.
it's above 5 million. And that being said, you know what? I as despite all of that, I had amazing doctors. I had the best neurosurgeon in all of APAC, and I don't think I would have gotten nearly as good care in the US.
No, the medical care here is second to none. It's simply the
I don't think it would have been. I think it would have been more expensive in the US.
Probably.
By a lot.
probably. But you would have been in a system that you understood, and you probably wouldn't have found yourself unprotected. Whereas here, a lot of people come here for a month or so, or maybe a bit longer, and have inadequate health insurance.
Yeah.
Especially when they're riding scooters. They'll quite often find that if they have an accident, that's not covered on their policy, or they've taken it with some Mickey Mouse company that will find any way of getting out of paying the bills. Because medical insurance is not cheap. I know that. It costs me a lot of money, but you have to have it. Okay.
Because the alternative costs even more. Speaking from experience.
Well, I'd like to thank Austin for that. And if you enjoyed this, please do subscribe to the channel. It will help us grow. I will see you in the next one.